in northern Connecticut, and him and his wife's yards get visited by bears from time to time, which is just like that's not something I'm ever gonna be able to be used to. I would have to move immediately. Yeah, this is about as bad as it gets. This is crazy.
You don't see it coming. Like there's literally nothing you can do at any point in my house.
She could have got killed, this lady.
Easily.
As crazy as that is, but a rock that size moving at that velocity, she could have got killed. This is about as dangerous. I wonder if she got insurance for this, because certain insurance is like, oh, we don't insure against X, Y, and Z. I hope her house can get fixed, man. My heart goes out to those folks.
The kinds of ways that insurance companies try and get out of paying out things is when maybe they'll say something like, it hit the front door instead of the back door, and our policy says if it hits the front door, then we don't pay for these issues. Things like that you try and find holes in any kind of way to not actually do what it is that you paid them for. As she stood there about to go into the living room, apparently it was the middle of the night, she was gonna go watch TV, and everyone's awake. It's Hawaii. Maybe that's the way these things work. I want to read a couple more comments because I think there's a bunch of stuff happening throughout all these stories, and I never get a chance to see what you guys think at the end. Really fast. Let's see. Jenny B, TYT member, says pro-life. Care for those unborn babies, except the one my wife is currently carrying. That one could just wait until I finish my important speech. We see the priorities happening. Hunger Games 1989, I think this is back on the Memphis cop. I mean, it's nice to finally have an ex-cop finally say this is not what cops are supposed to do, instead of all the cops saying that these cops had a right to do this or justifying them. We need more cops speaking out against police brutality, 100%. And also, by the way, that we always say this is the protocol. We need to retrain. That means we're admitting that the training is to murder people and to shoot them immediately, beat the hell out of them immediately. If they disrespect you, punch them and get the taser out, all that stuff. That's the training. Shouldn't a higher ups be the one saying, hell no, that's not what I train these cops to do? If nothing else, to save your own ass. But they save their own asses because of qualified immunity. Let's keep it real. I like this tagger name. Anna, your hair looks great, Dragon, says, I really wish everyone had several guns. They're always the most rational and appropriate course of action. Of course, talking about those neighbors. And to get in an argument over someone speeding, it always ends in gunshots, right? It happens all over the world. That's the way it's supposed to be, because self-defense or maybe just aggression is the line. Last one here, Dissident PM says, it may just be my own personal bias he's speaking, but when he stands back up straight, I really think he was contemplating just continuing on with his speech. That presidential nominee, I guess. He's trying to figure out exactly what he should do. And maybe you have that 5-second thought, I get it. But then take that 6th and 7th and 8th second and maybe go check on your wife. Again, I'm not here to judge. She's happy, he's happy. Good marriage. I'm sorry. Since Jason Ray had a super chat really fast. If she had complications and requires an abortion, will this guy be liable? The questions keep scrolling. I'm done. Thank you, Oz, for being here with us. Thank you guys for joining me as well. Go check out John Iadarola in the Damage Report next. We'll see you guys tomorrow for Big News Wednesday. Peace.
Welcome one and all to another episode of The Damage Report with me, John Iadarola, and on this Tuesday edition of the show, a very special guest joining us, I believe for the second time only, acting executive director for Gen Z for Change, Elise Joshi. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me again.
Glad to have you here. Thank you for taking time out. It's common practice that a lot of our co-hosts tend to be busy, but you just started classes up again, right?
Yes, last semester at Cal, so also last semester doing full-time work and full-time school. Thank goodness.
That seems like a lot. That's awesome. I like into maybe junior year or so when I was in college, back in dinosaur times, I would listen to the Young Turks. They were not inviting me on though. So anyway, I'm sort of after the fact jealous of you, but very happy to be having you on our program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, excited.
We're gonna be talking about some of the recent or upcoming actions for Gen Z for Change in just a little bit. So everyone stay tuned for that, but also a lot of big stories that we're gonna be talking about through the course of this hour. George Santos apparently feeling a little bit of the pressure because he's decided that he's not even going to pretend to do some parts of his job as a congressman. So that's gonna be fun. We've got updates on the right-wing attempt to spin the tragic killing of Tyre Nichols, going along paths we've seen them tread before. We'll be evaluating Elon Musk's apology for spreading homophobic conspiracy theories in the wake of the attempted assassination of Nancy and Paul Pelosi. And is COVID over? There's a bipartisan effort to declare it and to get credit for it. We'll be giving you our thoughts. And if you stick around for the full show in the after, Florida schools want to know more about the periods of students in high school. That's fun. And Chickengeddon, is the sky falling when it comes to foul? We will be evaluating the evidence there. But before that, please hit the like button, share the stream so that people know we're live. And if you want to reach out to Elise or myself with questions, comments, concerns, and all that, you can send us comments, tweets, and super chats, and we'll respond as we go. But with all that said, Elise, are you ready to start the show?
So ready.
Okay, well in that case, let's jump into it.
Doesn't it further wear down credibility when you put someone who's under state, local, federal, and international investigation as a representative of your party on committees? I'm talking about George Santos, representative from New York.
We should have that discussion. So let's have that discussion. You want to bring up Santos, and let's talk about the institution itself, because I agree wholeheartedly that Congress is broken.
It's interesting that you use the word agree there, Kevin McCarthy, because she hadn't been saying that. She was actually talking about something else, and you seem to understand that because you said you want to have a conversation about George Santos, then you immediately pivoted to something that was very much not George Santos. But maybe I'm being unfair. After all, maybe eventually he's gonna get to it and he's going to address the questions that just won't go away. Well, let's take a look at how the rest of the interview went.
I think your listeners or viewers should understand what proxy voting was, because it never took place in Congress.
But I'm asking you about George Santos.
I know you asked me a question. Let me ask you.
Because you could put it to a vote.
You asked me a question. I'd appreciate if you let me answer. So let's go through this, because it's not one simple answer.
If you got a third of your caucus to vote to oust him, you could do so. You don't think you could get your Republicans to do that?
I wasn't finished answering the question.
So you're just not going to answer the question I asked?
Well, no, you don't get to question whether I answer it. You asked a question. I'm trying to get you through that.
I don't think you've said the name George Santos like once.
But you know what?
You're talking about proxy voting and other things.
But you started the question with Congress was broken, and I agreed with you.
No, they're wrapping me in the control room because we're going to
that's unfortunate. I wish I could answer the question.
Yeah, he sure thinks it's unfortunate that he just didn't get around to answering the question. Or as he said when she rightly interrupted him, when he said, you haven't let me finish answering the question. Boy, you didn't start answering the question. And his little defense where he's like, yeah, well, but when you first said it, you said the word Congress. Okay, technically, but I think we all know what question she was answering. You can't be like, well, I'm just gonna talk about the decorations of the room because you asked the question in the room. So technically you freed me up to talk about whatever I want. No, it is very clear. One, that he does not want to have to talk about George Santos, obviously, and I sort of understand that. And two, that he's not as clever as he thinks he is, and not as good at sort of weaseling around the questions. That was embarrassing. It is obvious what he thinks, how unsure he is that the Republicans either should or would actually boot George Santos from the party or from Congress to whatever extent they have that ability. And so I don't, Elise, I just think it's hilarious that this is from my point of view, a layup. The guy's an insane liar. You can show yourselves to be even sort of like fake honest by at least distancing yourself from him, but they won't even do that.
No, it just is the epitome of what he is right now, and he's the leader supposedly, but I think it's clear with this and everything else that he's just not somebody who has much power or control. He doesn't really dictate what happens. He's really just a guy that is taking orders from other people, and he will mosey around answers because he really doesn't have much power. He sacrificed everything he believes in to have the title he has now, and now we're just seeing the effects of that.
Yeah, and we know that there are some in the Republican Party that feel like we might say for him that okay, so he's not really condemning George Santos, and he's certainly not trying to kick him out of the party, but at least he's not like really speaking out in defense of him, although he did say that he was elected by the constituents, which is technically true, but he knows how dishonest that is. And then you have people like Marjorie Greene that are just open boosters of George Santos. And the thing is, Marjorie Greene technically is not the Speaker of House. Technically, George Santos is, but if it came down to choosing between Kevin McCarthy and Marjorie Greene, where do we think the Republican base would go? Who do you think that they feel like a more warmth towards, Elise?
Well, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene has a lot more say in the House now than she did last year, because of a majority, but also because she has a lot of control with Kevin McCarthy now. But I also think that she's just down for whatever is going to create the most ruckus. I mean, she's not really for the American people or any policy in particular. She's just for blowing things up, and she'll be pro George Santos because he's drama and she loves drama.
Yeah, and I'm sure, he needs allies. I'm sure she would like some allies. I don't know how powerful of one he is. Although each of his different personas might have a little bit of power, and when you add them together, then maybe that's something, I don't know. But that's just, if you're gonna give a performance like that, my advice to Kevin McCarthy would be just don't go on the news. Like, honestly, what are you, if you can't come up with, like he had almost a defense when he's like, who are you talking about? Eric Swalwell or whatever. Like, no, obviously that's not who she's talking about, but at least then you can talk about, well, he's made all of these horrendous objective lies about the Holocaust, his mom dying and all that. And then you have Eric Swalwell, where we have a conspiracy theory about a Chinese spy or something. You could try to create a little bit of ambiguity there, but he couldn't stick to it. He started talking about proxy voting, and nobody's asking about that. Nobody cares about that. You're not convincing anyone.
You'd think a career politician would be better at spinning, but no.
Yeah, that's one of the main skills that they're supposed to have. But in any event, we do have some relatively breaking news when it comes to this. Maybe Kevin McCarthy putting some pressure on George Santos in the background. We don't know yet, but here's what we do know. Representative George Santos apparently told the House GOP conference on Tuesday behind closed doors that he wants off the two committees that he's currently on until his issues are resolved. And I think what he means by that is people stop asking him questions. I'm assuming at this point that his issues will never truly be resolved. They seem baked quite deep into him. But anyway, as of right now, he's serving on the small business and the science committees, and he apparently doesn't want to do that for now. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia told CNN that it was Santos's decision that he made on his own to abstain from the committees. I've literally never heard of anyone doing this before, but she said he told the conference he would step aside from the committees as the GOP is trying to oust Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota from the Foreign Affairs Committee. Specifically, he just felt like there was so much drama really over the situation, and especially what we're doing to remove Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee. But Mr. Santos' statement in there was just saying that he spoke with Speaker McCarthy and made this decision on his own. So I think tying this, for whatever reason, to their ridiculous xenophobic, Islamophobic attempt to get Ilhan Omar off of her committee is weird. They really do want to stress that this was his decision and not Kevin McCarthy's, which that actually makes me like maybe think that Kevin McCarthy did push for it. Why are they being so explicit about that? One would think a decision that a congressman announces was his decision. It seems defensive, like it's like they don't want the MAGA people to know that Kevin McCarthy was pushing for one of the big liars in their party off. I don't know. I'm a little bit confused, Elise, but what do you think?
I mean, don't you know George Santos is against the drama? You know, he wants to back away from it all. Of course, he wants to just avoid anything. That I honestly couldn't tell you, but this is the first I'm hearing about it. But I think you're right. It is just a way to distance Kevin McCarthy from any decision making, which is. It just seems like something he wouldn't necessarily want. I don't think he likes that he's being perceived as this spineless figure, but more and more decisions that are coming out of the House don't seem to associate with him. And this is just another example.
Yeah. There's a lot that I am fully willing to admit that I don't understand about this and that I'm not sure about. But if I can say definitively, I do not buy that he doesn't like drama. Come on, this guy. Didn't he, when like his boyfriend was gonna leave him, he was like, oh, I bought us tickets for a big vacation down to South America. And it was totally made up. He didn't have the tickets or whatever. Like, come on. Then he stole the guy's phone. You love the drama, and that's fine. Lots of people do. That might be the most endearing thing about George Santos. But no, I think, look, if anything, this is Kevin McCarthy wanting to not have another interview like he had with Margaret Brennan, which I understand, it was brutal. Him wanting to recede from the spotlight a little bit, thinking maybe that gets people to move on and forget about me. Or number three, the dude doesn't really want to work. He doesn't want to work on like marking up legislation and coming up with amendments and late night vote-a-ramas and all that. He wants like the benefits and he wants the cred without the work. So I don't know. I think he might just be using this as an opportunity to get out of some homework.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's a drama politician. He's an attention-grabbing person, and this is another headline that he gets to make, and it has nothing to do with policy again. So, yeah, whether it's Kevin McCarthy or George Santos or some combination of the two.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. That look, I think he's pretty much down for whatever headline, but some of the headlines that might be coming up, some of the news might not be as good for him going forward. Why don't we transition into that? You can add to the list of multiple investigations, both here in the United States and in Brazil, that are already ongoing, targeting Representative George Santos, if that's his real name. Well, now we have a new one. The DOJ has reportedly opened a criminal investigation into George Santos's campaign finances. This is not the only investigation that's currently looking into his campaign finances. But I think it's a good thing to investigate, because while he has done many reprehensible, unethical things, the clearest example that it appears we have when it comes to illegal acts is in his campaign finance. Aside from the fraud case in Brazil, he did appear to have done that. We'll see if Brazil ever gets justice. For now, though, there's a lot of questions about some of what he has claimed happened when it came to his campaign finance, and we want to give the details. So they say, in a sign that federal prosecutors are investigating Representative George Santos' campaign finances, the DOJ has reportedly asked the FEC to hold off on any enforcement actions against the freshman member of Congress, who's become notorious for literally everything. Earlier this month, the campaign watchdog group Campaign Legal Center asked the FEC to investigate the $705,000 that Santos said he loaned to his campaign. Considering he declared an income of just $55,000 back in 2020, the group wants the FEC to find out how he could have done so with his own funds. So they were going to investigate it. It appears now that the DOJ is asking them to stop because they don't want dueling investigations, perhaps. That's no guarantee that they're actually going to find anything, or if they do, that there will be consequences, or if there are, that those consequences will be significant. But it is a really interesting question as to where the hell that money came from. I don't know if maybe he just got lucky and found some original vintage packs of Pokemon cards, or maybe he bought a couple of Bored Apes and they went to the moon. But other than that, I don't know how you put together $700,000 in just a couple of years. But what do you think?
I honestly have no notes other than this doesn't surprise me. It's just one thing after another with him. And I have no idea how he would come up with that money, but his alternative life in Brazil might explain it, that we just don't know about.
True, maybe George Santos only had $55,000, but maybe Anthony DeVolder's just rolling in money. I don't know. But here's an interesting added wrinkle and some good work being done here by Mother Jones. They tried to call his top donors, and many don't seem to exist. Uh-oh. So under federal campaign finance law, it's illegal to donate money using a false name or the name of someone else. Now, bear in mind, in this case, it's other people who are being alleged to have used fake names, not George Santos, who also commonly uses fake names. So these questionable donations that they're looking into account for more than $30,000 of the $338,000 that his campaign raised from individual donors in 2020. It hasn't previously been looked into. And they've talked to dozens of the most generous donors, but they didn't. This is the campaign back in 2020, by the way. So bear in mind, as we go forward with the investigations, there's multiple years and multiple countries worth of potential illegal acts. But in any event, where that money came from, who actually gave it? Is it maybe just somebody not wanting the disclosure, so they use a fake name? Is there a good reason that they wanted to hide the source of the money? I don't know. But as of right now, we're obviously pretty sick of him. Turns out the people of his district are super sick of him. Overwhelming bipartisan support for his resignation inside of his congressional district. And these numbers are just insane, Elise. 78% of voters believe he should step down. That includes 71% of Republicans and 89% of Democrats. Now, I mean, one could make the point that maybe 71% isn't enough. The dude lied about his mom dying in the towers, and he lied about the Holocaust. How does 29% of your district Republicans still think, it's a mixed bag, or I don't have strong feelings? How do you not have strong feelings at this point? But I don't know if we've ever seen numbers this high in a bipartisan fashion, Elise, for people to step down. So that's something.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. And I would hope that if Kevin McCarthy doesn't want to oust him, that people do when the election comes around. But it's really disappointing when there is such bipartisan support that Republicans won't really do the right thing. But we know that bipartisan support doesn't really imply anything about a Republican Congress member's stance on anything. So still not a surprise.
That's true. Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily imply anything about what Kevin McCarthy would actually do. It might be that in the end, we just have to wait for him to either be destroyed in a Republican, more likely destroyed in a Republican primary in 2024. I don't think he'd get to the general election. And that can be okay. Like, when Madison Cawthorn gets elected and spends 2 years ignoring his constituents and punching dead trees or whatever, and then he gets ousted, that's good. And Lauren Boebert almost lost in her first re-election bid, but I don't know. For me, it's not enough. Like, I don't want him to have succeeded in getting even 2 years. Like the idea, like I can think of so many people, and I'm sure you can think of even more people who the country would be so enriched by them serving an elected office for a couple years. The idea that he would get to finish out his term and not be like ejected from like down the steps of the Capitol, it doesn't seem like enough considering the severity of his lies.
Exactly, and it really just highlights a pattern with GOP and Lauren Boebert, Madison Cawthorn, George Santos. It's all this radicalization of the right, and the fact that the establishment GOP don't seem to be doing anything to stop this radicalization implies some implicit or explicit support of it. And I worry that, George Santos having 2 more years, Lauren Boebert skating by, it furthers this narrative that the GOP are really, really starting to hone in on the furthest left, even though it seems like a small group. And yeah, it's very disappointing.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna be watching. I'm sure there's already tons of Republicans in his district that are just waiting to run against him. So that'll be coming in, honestly, not that much longer. But for now, we're gonna be moving on to other news. We have to take a short break, but don't go anywhere because there's a lot more after this. Okay, everybody, let's see what's going on out there in the audience. First of all, some members' comments saying from, for instance, Mickey C. Hey, Mickey C says, Santos's constituents did not vote for him. They voted for an imaginary being without the education he said, without the family, without the job experience, who is not at all who he claimed he was. Exactly. And look, I understand that some people, maybe some contrarians would say, yeah, but they all lie. They all exaggerate. And that is true, but I don't know. I like to think that we can grade the severity of the lies. Like there are Democratic senators who in their voting might be nearly as bad as Kyrsten Sinema. I don't think many of them match her in how much she's willing to just constantly spit in our face. But the issue with Kyrsten Sinema isn't just that she's trying to stop literally anything from happening and is wildly conservative for a Democrat. It's that she lied about what she was. That bothers us more. When you were like, hey, I was in the Green Party and like I'm super progressive and then you turn out to basically be Joe Manchin. That's worse. So I don't know. Like, is George Santos, is his voting going to be worse than Lauren Boebert's? I doubt it. I don't see how it could be. But we have to have some kind of, I'm literally fighting for any standards in politics anymore. Just desperately hoping that we will have some. If you can get away with lying about the Holocaust and 9/11 and being a champion basketball player and stealing a dog's cancer charity money, then you can lie about anything, and I don't want to live there. We dodged a bullet with Herschel Walker and his insane lies. And now we're gonna lose on George Santos. I just find that to be unacceptable. Okay, that said, later on today on the TYT network, you can tune in to an episode of The Conversation. Cenk Uygur is going to be speaking with Representative Ro Khanna. That's happening at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, 2:30 p.m. Pacific time at tyt.com/live, as well as all the other platforms. He's going to be asking the question that I somehow forgot to ask when I talked to Ro last week, which is he planning to run against Katie Porter? Now, my prediction would be he is not going to give a clear answer about that, because why would he reveal that if he's planning to announce it later? Maybe he'll say that he isn't. That could be clear, but in any event, it should be an interesting, fun conversation. So everyone, tune in for that. Okay, let's see. Dusty Jones became a tier 1 member over on YouTube. Glad to have you here. Thank you, Dusty. Dusty also sent a super chat saying, happy to be renewed to the Dragon Squad. I'm visiting my conservative grandparents and I'm keeping it together. They watch Fox. Ugh. Just ignore it. I'm sure that there are members of my family that are on the conservative side, but I guess partially because I moved across the country, I've never really had to experience it. I don't know, Elise, have you ever had to be around like wildly conservative members of your family?
Fortunately, no. I come from first-gen immigrants though, so that comes with conservative Democrats is how I would describe it. You have this pull yourself up from your bootstraps mentality because they've made it and they have their bias in making it. And so we have some clashing conversations as I'm a little bit more progressive, but thank goodness because we're brown, I don't have racist conversations with my extended family.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
You never know though.
You do never know.
I don't want to give examples necessarily that I've seen, but it can happen. Anyway, with that said, how many? We have 15 seconds. Leafy one pointed out that Lauren won by only 500 votes. And that's why, fingers crossed, she could potentially lose next time around. If the Democratic Party puts a little bit of money in it, it's possible. So we'll see, but we'll be right back. Okay, everybody, thank you for tuning in. I see Tracy Ravenhawk in the YouTube's comments just shouting, Elise and John. I appreciate that. And I did note that you put Elise first. I think we all noted that. Anyway, okay, if you're just joining our live stream right now, please hit the like button if you haven't already. We've got a lot more news to come, including we're about to launch into this. There are certain things that one might think coming out of watching the tragic video of the attack on Tyre Nichols that maybe some of these racist narratives that we often hear in these sorts of cases would not be able to be deployed considering what we saw. But I don't know why you had hope. No, they're still gonna do it. Take a look at this.
But here are some of the facts that people aren't talking about. This all could have been avoided with one simple move. Tyre Nichols could have complied from the moment he was pulled out of that car. If you watch this interaction, he never really complies until the very end.
Obviously, we have heard that sort of argument made by that sort of guy on that sort of network many, many, many times in these sorts of attacks. And it has been very clear for a very long time how intentionally stupid of a thing that is to say that if only he'd comply, well, then clearly that group of homicidal maniacs would have stopped beating him. That's not true. But even if you thought that maybe if he had somehow complied more than he already was, I mean, he was laid out on the ground. I don't know how much less of a threatening posture you could make. You would probably be able to bear in mind information that was already 100% available by the time Grant Stinchfield decided to do that stupid monologue. Tyre Nichols was given 71 commands in 13 minutes, shouted at him by multiple different people, giving him mutually exclusive commands at a time when he was being tased and pepper sprayed and beaten and being told to, for instance, simultaneously raise his arms when his arms were being held. Move in multiple different ways at the same exact time. Being told one thing by one cop, and then another cop runs up to get involved in the murder and yells something else. So I would love to know if Grant Stinchfield had the genetic capability to operate in good faith for even 3 or 4 seconds, how the hell was he supposed to comply with all that? And if we could create sort of like a holodeck type situation, we were to throw Grant Stinchfield in it, I would love to see him try to figure out what sort of compliance could be deployed that would stop those people from beating the life out of Tyre Nichols. Elise, I'm so sick of hearing it. It's a racist man making a racist argument for a racist audience and not caring about how racist it is because he knows this is gonna increase his clout and money.
It's as simple as that. And there is no justification for murder, but let's be clear that this was a traffic stop, and a traffic stop should not warrant this many officers and this kind of escalation. But police are trained to do that, and police are trained to, and they're told that if they de-escalate, they're putting themselves in danger, and they react in this way. And first of all, cops should not be involved in traffic stops, but the fact that it had escalated in this way is in no way to do with Tyre Nichols' response. It's just simply a system that is designed to create this stream of events. And it's really disappointing that even when Memphis does get ahead of it and charge these police officers, that Fox News still won't admit that there was something wrong. And it's still the fault of the person who was just innocently stopped for a traffic issue.
No, 100%. I'm gonna just briefly summarize the rest of his argument because I don't want people to have to hear his voice anymore, and you should definitely not watch his show. But he's very proud about this monologue. By the way, this isn't like one of the things where Aaron Rupar or ASIN or something like that, or Media Matters have grabbed this video. No, he's tweeting this out because he's very proud of the points that he's making. He says the mainstream media doesn't care about Tyre Nichols. Instead, leftists are exploiting the case to divide the nation and wage war on all cops. Here are the facts. And he goes on to say that they don't actually care. Oh no, Grant Stinchfield cares. He definitely cares. His heart is broken for this murder, which is why he felt like he needed to go on social media on his TV show and talk about how people are being mean to the cops. In the wake of watching 5 individuals beat the life out of a person, can't dispute it in literally any way. That's what happened. You watched it. It was inhuman. It was barbaric. It was brutal. He feels like his job is to defend the cops. They're at like relatively reasonable Republicans in this case would be like, bad apples? He's not even doing bad apples. He's just out and out defending the cops. And at the end of the day, you don't care about Grant Stinchfield. I don't care about Grant Stinchfield. I had to check to make sure that I was pronouncing his last name right. I'm gonna forget his name in about 5 seconds. But there are so many right wingers out there that are proving to us in the wake of that video coming out that there is no case bad enough, clear enough, videotaped enough that is going to get through to them, that is going to get them to see that this is a busted system that desperately needs reform to the extent that a system like this can be reformed or to be broken down in the way that Elise pointed out. Maybe cops shouldn't be doing sorts of things. Maybe they don't need to be involved in traffic stops. Maybe that's just worse for America. And so just bear that in mind going forward. Like we can see that and be devastated by it. We can use it as the stimulus to try to push for some sort of reform. But there are always going to be the Grant Stinchfields that see it and think, oh, that looks really bad for us. But war on the cops. And they're just going to continue that narrative.
Yeah, but it's going to get harder and harder for them to do that. And especially when it comes to when it comes to videos like this, where every reform that has been tried has been highlighted in this video to have failed. And it becomes easier and easier as a progressive to highlight that there's something fundamentally flawed with police. You can diversify cops all you want. You can switch guns out for tasers. You can add money to train them harder. And this still happens. So maybe there's something very dramatic that we can do to prioritize community. And that's going to get more popular with Republicans and independents and Democrats. Matter of time.
I hope. Well, let's turn now to some other updates in this story. Attorneys representing the family of Tyre Nichols are pointing out one of the recent updates in the investigation that seems more than a little bit suspicious, and it has to do with the only known as of this point white police officer that was involved in the killing of Tyre Nichols, seeming to get some special treatment. So Memphis Police Department has recently confirmed that Officer Preston Hemphill, who, if the name wasn't enough for you to know, is white, was relieved of duty and put on paid administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. So eventually he's relieved of duty or whatever. Not nearly as bad as what's happened with the other cops. But lawyers point out that Hemphill can be seen on body camera footage released by the Memphis PD last week. He's violently pulling Nichols from the car while hitting him on the ground with a taser, later saying, quote, "I hope they stomp his ass after he runs away." Well, in this case, Preston Hemphill got his wish, got the stomping that he wanted. Now he can live with that for the rest of his life. Imagine like knowing that you have a video camera broadcast, like recording on your chest saying, "I hope they beat the hell out of that person," and you get what you want. The lawyers have added, why is his identity and the role he played in the death just now coming to light? Because bear in mind, this investigation has been going on for some time. The other identities were revealed. They had been fired and eventually charged. Why was this one guy being shielded and protected from the public eye, they say? And a lot of people are speculating, and it's wild speculation, I know, that maybe the fact that he was the white individual in this case might have had something to do with that. Elise, what do you think about this case that the lawyers for the Nichols family are saying?
Is that too far-fetched of an idea? That, hey, we've seen this video, it's brutal, we got to get ahead of things. So let's charge the black officers involved, and we'll worry about this white guy later. And it just doesn't seem in this country, with responses in general to police brutality, that we're going to do the least that we possibly can for accountability. And just the note on his reaction and his commentary with the body camera, it really just highlights how police know how much power there is behind them, that they don't believe that they will ever be held accountable. They can say whatever they want, they can do whatever they want with video cameras, and they have this belief that nothing bad's gonna happen to them.
Yeah, they're confident. No, like think about the level of confidence that you would have to have. Again, like as we were talking about, because we've been talking about this now for several days. It's not just that all of them have cameras on their chest. I don't know what has to be happening to you psychologically and emotionally that you would do the things that they do, literally knowing that you have a camera in your chest. Have you ever heard? There's like one of the things that people say. It's like a cliche for how to live a good life or whatever. It's I had heard it growing up. It's like live like your dead grandma's watching you from heaven or whatever. Like live like your relatives are watching you, and only do the things that you'd be comfortable doing if you knew they were watching. Would that stop them at this point? Because you're on camera, you know that. How does that not stop you? But beyond that, they've been cops since 2017. People are saying most of them started around 2017. How many incredibly high profile national killings of unarmed people, the scandals related to that, have they been through as cops? They've seen news cycle after news cycle after news cycle. They've seen the George Floyd protests. They've seen endless cases like this. And then they go and chase that person and they just beat him to death. Nothing in the context, nothing in the accountability, nothing in the training, nothing was enough to get them to stop. I'm not even saying not to do it at all. even mid-beating for them to stop. At some point for one of them to say, I think we got him. It's crazy how little has any effect at all, Elise.
Yeah, and it's less about don't you know the consequences and more, do you identify with the people in your community as police officers? Why did you become a cop? What was your goal? Was it to make your community safer? Because you'd think they wouldn't even have escalated to this situation, but in this situation, like, what am I doing right now? What have I become? I mean, I don't know how training police officers gets to the point of just separating them from their community, but also separating them from their humanity. Because these are real people, and police officers are real people, and somehow through training or through hanging around with their buddies all the time, they've convinced themselves that they're superior, that they're outside of accountability, that they aren't really members of the places that they live.
Yeah, they're obviously there is something fundamentally dehumanizing happening where they start to see those people as something else, something lesser, something that does not need to be protected, something that does not need to be served. Okay, we're gonna move on in just 1 second to other news. As a bit of a palate cleanser, I'm just gonna read a comment or two. I'd seen Caleb Winnie just popped into the comments. They just dropped in. Hi, John. Can't stay long, but I hit the like button. Thank you for your service. I appreciate that. I am Sock says, I hope they keep Santos around forever. It makes the Republicans look so bad at first at little cost. Well, but is it a little cost? I understand it's not the highest cost that we've paid, but it's not nothing. And by the way, don't worry, I am Sock. If we do get rid of George Santos, there are gonna be plenty of Republicans making them look bad. I'm not too worried about that. But anyway, I like the disagreement. Let's bring on more of it after all. And remember, there's gonna be a Blue Apron gift card being given away for good or funny or insightful comments. So send those at us. With that said, let's move on to a little story. In the wake of the vicious act of political violence against Nancy Pelosi and her husband, Paul, you know that there was a lot of conspiracy theorizing going around, jokes being made by right wingers about the attack. And Elon Musk over there, who used to be the richest man in the world, participated in that. Spreading homophobic conspiracy theories that this was not a right winger trying to assassinate the Speaker of the House. It was just a gay fling or something. It was a fun little conspiracy theory for them, and they really enjoyed it. Elon Musk, of course, is gonna jump in something like that, which is why I was pretty shocked when I saw that he apparently apologized for tweeting the baseless conspiracy theory about Paul Pelosi. You don't often see any right winger apologize for that sort of thing. You know, after the video came out of the Paul Pelosi attack, we have not seen much of that. I think Glenn Beck sort of apologized. So Elon Musk did it, and that is good news. Or at least it would be good news because I'm not actually buying it. Let's actually dive into the evidence that's informing all of these headlines of him apologizing for doing that stuff. First of all, if you didn't see, he responded to a tweet by Hillary Clinton back then saying, there's a tiny possibility there might be more to this story than meets the eye. And so he shared this article to the Santa Monica Observer, which attributes the attack to some sort of argument that went wrong, or Paul Pelosi knew him, or they were hooking up, or God knows what. Something that means we don't have to have a long-awaited reckoning on political violence in America. Santa Monica Observer, of course, has long been known for publishing fake news, just completely made up news about Hillary Clinton dying and her body double debating Donald Trump and all that. But you know, why would the richest man in the world and a guy who owns one of the most important social media companies know anything about the sources that he's spreading? In any event, that was then, and this is now. So what is the apology? It appears to be this. Stephanie Ruhle had tweeted, this would be a perfect moment for Elon Musk to apologize to the Pelosi family. Elon Musk replied, I did. Okay, so first off, are we supposed to accept that he did? Because he said that he did? Well, he'd never lie. But let's say that you do accept it, that some conversation happened. The public facing thing, the accountability part is, I did. Not even with a period or anything. 2-word answer, he gives you 5 characters counting the space. Seems a little bit dismissive of the whole thing, but if possible, it actually gets worse from there. Juanita Broderick had tweeted, idiots on the left want Elon Musk to apologize to the Pelosi's for what? It still is questionable and bizarre situation between 2 men in their underwear. And he replied, nonetheless, I apologize. You don't have to actually reply to a tweet by Juanita Broderick that once again reiterates, I don't know, two men in their tighty whities, kind of curious. And he says, nonetheless, that means he is putting respect on the nonsense she's saying. Yes, he apologized, but he also decided to once again engage with homophobic conspiracy theories about the attack. And then, because of course everything in the end has to be about him, some rando tweets just wondering how many influential people have asked your forgiveness for undeservedly saying and doing bad things to you, for lying about you, your family and companies, for bringing so much harm to you. And he says, that is rather rare. Oh yes, no, you are every bit the victim after all. I mean, when people like tweet out the photo of you partying with Ghislaine Maxwell or post articles about Teslas igniting and causing pileups and all that, that is the same thing as you implying that an old man whose head had just been bashed in by a right winger with a hammer is involved in some sort of illicit gay affair. That's pretty much the same thing. So maybe I'm the bad guy, Elise. But all these headlines that are like, let's shower praise on Elon Musk, I'm not buying it. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, please, John, have sympathy for the billionaire. Don't you know, like, the struggles that he has being on the internet? It's so tough for him to have to endure the crash of Tesla stock, and you just feel bad for his misfortunes.
I feel terrible. I feel terrible.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit bad for the shareholders of Tesla, not so much for him. I feel bad for the employees of Tesla that would like to have a CEO that actually remembered that he worked there. I feel bad for the people whose lives are lost in those crashes and stuff like that. Not so much for the formerly richest man in the world.
Likewise.
Okay. With that said, we're gonna take a short break, respond to some of your comments, and when we come back, Donald Trump is defending himself from accusations being made by Stormy Daniels and her lawyers, and in doing so, seems to be admitting that something actually happened. We'll give you the details after this. Okay, everybody, how are we 42 minutes into the show already? Jesus, it passes by so fast. Okay, here are some comments going on. First of all, in the members section, next TYT reporter says, what does complying have to do with him being beaten to death in handcuffs? Well, if you're trying to avoid actually grappling with that horror, nothing. I mean, but he doesn't want to talk about that. So he's talking about complying instead. Drunk Mom Dragon says, unfortunately, I don't think most cops join the force because they want to make their community safer, but instead because they want power over people. Look, it is obviously a split. People join for all sorts of different reasons. There are perfectly good cops. I've had good interactions with the cops, although again, as I said on yesterday's show, I am notably a white male, so my odds of those interactions being positive are higher than most. But there are indisputably many cops who get in for reasons that have nothing to do with protecting or serving. Okay, Swedane Dragon, member for 5 months on YouTube, says even Trump was appalled by the violence. Yeah, initially he did post something about the killing of Tyre Nichols that seemed to imply that it was terrible. We'll see long term what his commentary about the cops is. Remember, he has often talked about wanting cops to be rougher with people and rough them up and all that. He wants his followers to be rougher with protesters. It's great if he's a little bit against violence now, but there are few who have been more pro political violence in the past 10 years or so than him. Okay, Dragonheart sent in a super chat saying, I have to watch Newsmax every morning because of my gun-toting, literally, extreme right-wing son-in-law while waiting to take my granddaughter to school. Is he bringing guns around your grand? I feel like that's probably necessary. I don't know the full context. I'm going to assume that it's probably not necessary. Oh, wait until you see the gun control legislation we're going to talk about on tomorrow's show. In Florida, they've got some wild stuff that they're working on. Okay, NoFX Shun sent in a super chat saying the multiple conflicting commands is a stress induction tactic used in military training done to soldiers to simulate being abducted by an enemy. 100%. It's, well, whether it's, I mean, in this case, I do agree that it's intentional, but obviously it is by design impossible to comply with. Sayla Digurin says in a super chat, they're taking him off for now, so their attempts to remove Omar has one less accurate point of contention, similar to Franklin leaving to combat pedo, that a reference to Roy Moore in a previous election. Perhaps. I still hope that they fail. I hope that there's enough non-100% crazy Republicans that they won't kick her off the committee, but we'll have to see. May Money in the building. Hey, May Money says, is your co-host too young for a Star Trek reference, John? Well, I don't know if that's anything to do with being too young. There are, after all, new Star Trek shows coming out. Season 3 of Picard is about to come out in just a couple of weeks. But anyway, Star Trek isn't like as high profile as a lot of other IPs. I don't know, Elise, what's your familiarity with Star Trek?
I was always a Star Wars girl growing up. Like, I was obsessed with Star Wars. My brother was really into Star Trek, so I've seen like the originals, but I'm definitely more familiar with Star Wars. I don't think I'm too young though. 20.
No. There's stuff coming out. They're gonna do another movie and all that. But yeah, there's just other stuff that's higher profile. I would say Star Wars has probably for a very long time been higher profile, but definitely recently. Okay, how much time do we have? 27 seconds. Soul Life reminds us that they falsified audio too, and like always, they lied about the interaction they had with Tyre Nichols. So again, yes, comply with the people who are gonna lie to cover up your murder. That's what they would have you do. Okay, Karen says, my family didn't allow talking during Rush Limbaugh. Oh, thankfully, I never had to deal with that. Anyway, that said, more news to come, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Adding on to that, not only did I not have to sit through like right-wing news, even my grandfather on my father's side, who was the most political person in my family that I can remember, he's like sort of an old school liberal Christian or whatever. I don't remember him even watching like CNN or MSNBC or anything like that. Like, it was nice to not grow up around too much of that stuff, particularly the right-wing news. But in any event, we've got news to get to, so buckle up. We're launching into this.
Donald will ultimately be held accountable for this Stormy Daniels payment.
Well, that is a bold prediction from Michael Cohen. Of course, Michael Cohen, while he has to some extent tried to move slightly closer to the light once again since leaving the service of Donald Trump, has a history, and you can think of him whatever you want. He believes that this hush money payments investigation, which we're gonna give you the details on, is perhaps one of the greatest threats to Trump going forward. Here is him making the case.
Is the most detrimental to him, his freedom, his livelihood, his business, etc., because it's the easiest to prove. The checks are the checks. We know a lot. There's recordings which have been released in the past. This is an easy one, unlike some of the other cases, like the Fannie Willis case in Georgia. Well, he will just come out and lie, which is what he does with impunity, and say, I truly thought that there was 17,861 votes stolen from me, so that attacks the credibility. In this specific case, the first 3-month payment was made by Donald Trump, and I gave those to the House Oversight Committee who posted them and so on. And so he's not in the same position where he can deny or lie the way that he will in some of the other matters.
So again, think whatever you will, and I think there's a lot of thoughts to be had about Michael Cohen, but I think he makes a good case acknowledging the ridiculous status quo of legal accountability that we exist in. So let me just say, Elise, I am sick of this game, and the game is, it's irrelevant if you did the thing. Even if we know that you did the thing, that's irrelevant. We're setting that aside. But like, can you prove the state of mind and like motivation? And did he know? Like, no actual person believes that he thought that he legitimately had those specific number of votes stolen from him. It's BS. Or like, well, what was his motivation for stealing all the classified documents? I know that he was told for 18 months that he had to give them back, and he kept refusing to give them back. But like, what was his state of mind and his emotional state? Like, I think that Michael Cohen is accurate to say that is the battleground that these things are fought on. I just hate that if you did the crime, you should pay the penalty. It seems like that's how it should work.
Yeah, but did you do it? And if we can prove that you did it, let's move on from there. And we can, speculate all we want, and that can be fun. But goodness, crime after crime after crime is done. I think at this point, we can just assume it's selfishness and just move on to charges.
Yeah, I would love that. And look, I do agree that if what he is saying about the payments and the checks and all that is true, that it is that clear cut, then yes, it is very difficult for him to deny what was going on there. And if he broke the law, again, there should be the consequences. Again, it's just weird that it's like you have to go for the one where it's clearest, even if it's like by far not the objectively worst thing. Like it's terrible, and the stuff that he's saying, and we'll get to that, is making it even worse. But it's all going to come down to what they can prove. Okay, well, we'll see. The reason that this is something that Michael Cohen would be talking about again is that they appear to be making some moves on this. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office just yesterday began presenting evidence to a grand jury about his role in paying hush money to Stormy Daniels back during the 2016 presidential campaign. They say, the New York Times, that it's laying the groundwork for potential criminal charges. I am just going to say there's no room on the ground anymore for all the groundwork that has been laid. Stop laying groundwork, start making charges would be my request, because we got a lot of document groundwork and Ukraine groundwork and a lot of groundwork. Anyway, on Monday, one of the witnesses was seen with his lawyer entering the building. This is David Pecker, former publisher of the National Enquirer, the tabloid that helped broker the deal with Stormy Daniels back when that was happening. And they've also begun contacting officials involved in Mr. Trump's 2016 campaign. This is they also have signs that they're subpoenaing phone records and other documents that might shed light on the episode. So they're apparently taking it seriously. It's up to each of us individually how seriously we're gonna take it. I don't know how much of my spirit I'm willing to invest in this. Elise, what do you think in comparison to all of what's going on?
Yeah, for the last year, I've been the type to just, I was tired. I was campaigning to get him out of office through most of 2020 and just honestly was burnt out and couldn't hear his name anymore. Like, you see a headline and just be like, okay, you know what? I don't have time for this right now. But now that he's running again, which I could get into how frustrating that is. It's important to know that his base is watching it and know that his base is following along and creating conspiracy theories related to this. So I will follow along and I will hope that, crucial evidence is brought on him. So maybe you can get those reasonable right-wingers that will not vote for him, if they are given the chance. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
I know a lot of people are probably wondering, so what is Trump saying about this? Oh, he is saying things. I do think it's interesting, as I alluded to in the intro. We've got two bleats from Truth Social. In the first, he once again insults her appearance. Again, I've never thought that it's a great defense against accusations of sexual impropriety or sexual assault that you call the woman ugly. He thinks that that's a genius move. I've never understood it. In any event, in this first one that you're seeing there, he says, never had an affair. That's a strong denial that the claims that she's making didn't actually happen. Which is why it's interesting that in this second bleat, he says, with respect to the Stormy nonsense, it is very old and happened a long time ago. Follow-up question, Donald Trump, what happened a very long time ago? Because I was led to believe that you never had an affair. So seems like these are different defenses. One is denying that anything that happened, and the other saying is like, oh, that's such old business. So like the statute of limitations, we're so far beyond it at this point. Beyond for what? Like he's saying it was old, but you're saying it didn't happen. Like, can't you decide which defense you're making against the particular scandal? Maybe he's confused, as so many of us are, about all of these. Maybe he's thinking about the ongoing rape case that's going on. Maybe he's confused about those. I don't know, but he should get his story together because this isn't looking good domestically for him. In any event, why don't we move on to one more topic with what remains of this first hour, and it's a fun one. Oh, actually, before we jump into that, I do want to thank Hrund. I saw a super chat, a very generous super chat. Thank you, Hrund, who'd said, in Russia, they use weapons. In Iran, they take off heads. In Israel, the people get guns. There's a bit of I think a translation thing happening there, but I do appreciate the support for the channel. Thank you for watching. And with that said, now let's launch into this last topic for the hour. President Biden has announced that he's going to end the twin national emergencies for addressing the COVID-19 pandemic on May 11th. So that is going to be really like the final death knell for the federal government taking seriously the pandemic. We've already been making steps towards that. But the interesting little wrinkle is that while Biden announcing that is something that we might agree with, might disagree with, we can have a discussion. At the same time, Republicans are mad at him, not for doing it, but for trying to take credit for it. Marjorie Greene tweeted out, "Too late. Republicans already announced we're declaring COVID is over and passing it through the House this week. The GOP is leading on this issue and Biden is trying to take credit." Well, look, I think a fight over who gets credit for giving up on fighting a pandemic is a weird thing to do. But even inside of the case that you're making, you said we've already done this, we're gonna pass it in the House. Yeah, but you haven't passed it in the House, did you? So how do you get credit for something that you admit you haven't done yet? Anyway, I track the numbers, Elise, every day on the pandemic. I can tell you that in the most recent accounting, we had between 45 and 46,000 cases. That the test positivity rate right now is still at 11%, and over 500 people died in the most recent one-day reporting. So it doesn't feel to me like COVID is over, but I understand that it's complex and that a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about this. So what do you think about this announcement from President Biden?
It just what it reminds me of is this claim of for other issues of, guys, the economy's back. We're creating, thousands of jobs a day, don't you know? And then, you have people sitting at home that are like, I can barely make ends meet. I'm barely paying for rent. And it's the same thing with COVID. It's I'm, afraid to go outside, and I'm immunocompromised. I have kids at home. Whatever it may be, or you just, as a healthy person, still don't, feel safe because the risks. And it's the Biden administration. It's GOP lying to our faces when we are faced with the reality of how things are, whether that's for our health or the economy.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Tell to those people who are still worried about it that COVID is over. Tell to the people that are still dealing with long COVID and would love to figure out what sort of help is going to be presented to the millions of people like that. Or just tell it to COVID, Marjorie Greene. Tell COVID that it's over, and we'll see if it agrees. Like, oh, I hadn't realized. She acts as if it's like the Wile E. Coyote running off a cliff and not falling until he looks down and realizes. Like, you can't clue the virus into it. Either it's still there or it's not, and it still very much is here. And look, I will grant you that obviously things can't stay the same forever. I modify my behavior based on context. Took a trip to do a live show in San Francisco last weekend. I wore a mask during it, or not literally during the show, but during all of my interactions and as I was going around. But that said, I don't, like, if I'm around one coworker here, I act accordingly. I just think that when you are in charge of the response, you should have a slightly different approach. And also, by the way, like, if Joe Biden says that his view has changed based on context, maybe that means something, because after all, he did take it very seriously for some time. Marjorie Greene is like, no, I'm telling you honestly that it's over right now. Yeah, but you never accepted it. You never agreed that we needed to do anything. So you declaring it over now, what does that even mean? You wanted people to shoot up colloidal silver and deny vaccines. So I don't know, your approach to this isn't particularly important to me. In any event, super last point, at least before we move on.
Oh, not really. You're hitting all the points. Yeah. It's just there's a difference between the people who have denied COVID from day one and have fought against any preventable measures, and somebody who has been advocating for for vaccine distribution and adequate ventilation and you name it. But I just think it's funny from both parties that we're going to deny the reality of everyday Americans.
We'll see what happens. Hopefully it complies and just goes away. With that said, that is it for the first hour of the show. Thank you everyone who's been listening and watching, but there is more to come in the aftermath, so don't go anywhere. Elise and I'll be back after this. Welcome back to the Aftermath, everybody. I'm John Iadarola. She is Elise Joshi. Elise, how's it going?
Doing so well. Excited.
Glad to hear it and glad to have you here. We're gonna respond to some of your comments in just a little bit. We're also gonna get to other news. But before that, there was something that we did want to talk about. We're working to set up some interviews with other activists working right now around the protests around Cop City. But I know, Elise, that this is something that you and your organization have been working around. So tell me a little bit about, for people who might not have been following this, although obviously the protests have been going on for quite some time now, and they've intensified in the wakes of certain deaths in the area and all that. Tell me a little bit about the work that's being done and what some of the plans are going forward.
Yeah, so for context, if anyone hasn't been up to date, Atlanta is funding a $90 million project that is going to destroy 350 acres of precious Atlanta forest, described as the lungs of Atlanta. So really crucial for the ecosystem and the health of community. But what they're doing this for is to build a cop training facility where they're going to basically test out any militarization techniques, whether it be tear gas or chases or raids or whatever, and bring in cops from across the country and training them and sending them out. So this is a national issue, not just an Atlanta issue, and absolutely ridiculous. And so what people are doing is a variation of techniques, whether it be protests in Atlanta. Forest defenders are, living in tree houses to defend the Atlanta forests, and unfortunately, one person, Tortuguita, has been killed by police already for defending Atlanta forests. So this is a really crucial issue, and it's very timely. So Gen Z for Change is trying to make it easier for people across the country to help if they want to, even if they don't live in Atlanta. One of those being the contractors that are involved in building Cop City, and they've got a lot of emails that you can contact them at. So we're going to develop a email bot that allows you to automatically email the contractors involved in Cop City, urging them to stop the project. So that should be coming out soon, but we have those emails available. Check out our Gen Z for Change's account in the next few days because we're really excited to launch that, make it easier for you.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, you had tweeted out your personal Twitter a list of those accounts, correct?
Yes, and we've found hundreds more since then. So I'm really looking forward to pushing that out with the team.
Awesome, and until the bot that you were talking about comes out, I mean, everyone feel free. If you've been hearing a lot about ChatGPT, I'm sure it can help you in writing a letter to send to them. But anyway, it's a really important topic, not only for the obvious environmental damage that it's going to do to the area, and also that many people in that area might not like having this sort of training center right there, but then also what's actually going to be happening there on a daily basis. What effect is it going to have on the country? The work that's being done there, the training that's being done there, the obvious focus on militarization, what is going to be being exported from that around the country? I think that there's a lot of very understandable concerns about that.
Yeah, this is not supported by the vast majority of Atlanta community members. This, whether it be for their health or their safety, because they know that cops don't protect them. And so, and if you live in LA and in New York and wherever across the country, this is a concern for you because the police from your city will be also trained there. So, if you want to help, just look at our account next week or so.
Yeah. What are the Twitter accounts that people should check out?
Go to Gen Z for Change, and Elise Joshi will have action plans for you, and also go to I think Defend Atlanta Forest on Twitter. Definitely prioritize them because they're doing the on the ground work that's definitely really going to make a difference.
I like it, thank you. Okay, with that, let's respond to just a couple of quick comments, and we're gonna jump into our stories. I just saw a Feral Dragon became a tier 3 member. Seems like a pretty unpredictable, uncontrollable member, but that's okay. We're gonna have our eye on you, Feral. Thank you for being here and being a member. Moondragon says in a super chat, for Trump's motivation, you need just his quote about shooting a person on 5th Ave. He thinks he's above the law. Yeah, well, he's largely been proven to be above the law up until recently, so gotta give him that. Willie Weeder became a tier 1 member. Thank you. Illa Bear, member for 20 months. I was named after. I'm having a little bit of trouble deciphering. I love the emojis, but I'm having a little bit of trouble deciphering that. But thank you, Bear. Two-headed giant member for 8 months says, how many undercover police training videos have we seen over the years showing that they know they can get away with these things? Yes, but that's the sort of thing that it would make sense to have an effect on the conversation. But one would also think the video of the tragic killing of Tyre Nichols would have an effect. And we are continually surprised by how little matters in this world. Cryptid Mage over on Twitch has been a subscriber for 24 months, says, weird how people who won't comply with mask mandates think you should comply with 71 simultaneous commands given to you by police. That's a good point. You know what, I like that, Cryptid Mage? You just got a Blue Apron gift card. All you have to do is send an email to rewards@tyt.com, send your first name, last name, and the handle that you use for that comment, and you will get a $100 gift card to Blue Apron. So I hope you enjoy that, and I appreciate you making that comparison. My frustration, we don't talk as much obviously about COVID as we used to, but for many of you watching, you might have started watching during the pandemic when that was obviously our main focus for a very, very long time. And I don't know if I'm ever going to fully mentally recover from how disappointing people's actions were during that time. Like people who should know better, people who lie to their audience and increase the chance of them dying for clout. I don't know if I'm ever gonna be exactly the same. I'm still, I would describe myself as idealistic. I don't think I'm as idealistic or have as much faith in humanity as I did prior to that period. So anyway, appreciate your comment. Thank you for that. And with that said, Elise, you ready to talk about some news?
Yep, I'm pumped.
Okay, then let's do it. Oh boy, Florida. The Florida High School Athletics Association wants information on student athletes. You're probably not shocked to hear that. It's been a big focus of conservatives around the country, but specifically, they want information about their periods and they want to make it mandatory. So they've recommended to their board of directors, which is going to meet in February and make a final decision on this, that information should be collected and required. So they announced back in October, by the way, and we're going to do the lead up to this, that it was changing its annual physical form for student athletes to a digital version instead of paper. That sounds innocuous enough. The form includes optional but detailed questions about students' menstruation cycles, including when they got their first period, when they had their most recent one, and how many weeks pass between periods. Previously, only one page of the paper form on which a pediatrician would sign off on a student being allowed to play would be submitted to a school, but the entire digital form will now be submitted. So previously, much of this information was optional. They're getting rid of that. In the switch to digital, you will now need to provide that information. So the people that are saying, schools are filled with pervs, we gotta protect the kids, tell me about your period, I want more info. That's who they actually are. And so we're gonna give you more information, but Elise, I know you're not that far out of high school. What do you think about this change that they're making in Florida?
It's very Florida. And I personally, at 15 years old, was confused about all of this stuff, and I feel uncomfortable almost talking about it now, and to have to reveal that information to the state for what reason, other than what I would assume to just to control my body in some way. I mean, I can't even think of the plethora of reasons why they would want this, but
I think we know.
Yeah.
I think we know the main reason that they want it. But sorry, continue.
No, I mean, yeah, you got it. It just feels invasive. That's it.
Yeah, 100%. As Jessica Valenti points out on Twitter, other states and athletic programs require physicals, including details about menstruation from students. But importantly, they allow all of that private info to stay with the kids' doctors. The way all medical information is supposed to stay between you and the doctor. That's the whole point. Wasn't Marjorie Greene freaking out about HIPAA violations a couple years back? No, now they want it to be directly turned in because again, keeping it private in no way infringes on the health of the student. They get, evaluated, they can ask questions, they can get medication and treatments and that sort of thing. See, because that process is about the health of the teen, of the student. Getting this information and explicitly making it that we want your history of menstruation is obviously in no way about the health of literally anyone. It's about political attacks. It's about their anti-wokeness. It's about trying to eliminate the trans community. That's all it is about. That's what they want. And all of their talk about so they think that if a bi third grade teacher is like, hey everyone, I just want you to know I'm really happy because I got a new girlfriend, they want that person to be fired because they talked about their sexuality. But they want mandated culling of menstruation information. It seems a little bit muddled as an ideology, but I think we all know where they're going. Any other thoughts, Elise?
I just wonder what happened to the narrative that, states shouldn't be involved with our business. Where does that come when it comes to police, when it comes to transgender autonomy, and just believing that, maybe doctors and the trans community can work this out together and figure out a plan that is safe for the children who want to transition. And so no, I have decided that I know more than a doctor, and we're going to inflict a lot of what is going to be like a mental health crisis for trans kids. And I'm very afraid for the state of Florida, in the safety and health of a lot of youth.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's just insane. Obviously, they would never allow, you cannot say that you want a small government when you want to track people's bodily fluids. And do we do this for anything else? If we were to say, I'm a little bit worried, as so many conservative men are, about weak beta men. So all Republican politicians, I want to make sure that they're strong. So I want to track their testosterone levels, and I want it to be publicly available. There should be a searchable database, and sperm counts too. So Ron DeSantis, I'm going to need you to produce specimens so we can make sure that you're a man. Because if you're not a man, then you clearly aren't fit to govern. They would never allow any of this. And also, I want to be very clear, I don't want any of it. But that's because they consider themselves to be humans. And here we're just talking about kids, about women, about whatever. Florida. Let's move on to related topics. The subjugation of women and trans men continue. Let's jump into this.
I think every candidate has to address it in their state. I do not think they can ignore it. I think they have to take it head on. This is where the Democrats want to play. They'll have the money to make this an issue. So we have to tackle it, put them on the defensive on their policy of due date abortion, on gender selection abortion. I think that's what China does, that you can abort a baby just because it's a girl, and then pivot to the voter as a whole voter. Most voters don't wake up thinking about abortion every day. What they're thinking about, and we know this, is crime and the economy. So it's got to be a three-step process. Address it, put them on the defensive, and then get back on the issues that the voters care about.
So that is Ronna McDaniel, head of the RNC, back before the midterm elections, back when the Republicans seemed pretty sure that for some reason destroying Roe v. Wade, stripping people of their rights, was going to be a big winner with the voters. They'd already lost multiple special elections and all that, but they still thought it. And that turned out not to be the case. And so in the months immediately after the election, you heard people like specifically Ronna McDaniel saying, okay, well, we're recalibrating, and I know, we destroyed Roe v. Wade and everything, but don't worry, everyone. We're not radicals. We're not extremists. Stop freaking out about this topic. We're not going to do anything more like this. And I don't know if maybe it had to do with the fact that her getting reelected was a little bit difficult, and people like Ron DeSantis were attacking her. I don't know, but that recalibration on abortion, that attempt to convince people across America that they weren't coming for any more of their rights, that is done. They are going back into attack mode. The same sorts of attacks that hurt them so much in the midterms. The RNC passed a resolution to go on offense in the 2024 election cycle on abortion and passed the strongest pro-life legislation possible. That's, of course, their vapid, meaningless language. In the meantime, with language urging the adoption of 6-week bans. That's state, that's federal, that's everywhere. That is effectively a full ban across the country. Most people won't even know that they're pregnant at that point. That's why they do it. It has nothing to do with an electrical signal that they call a heartbeat. It has to do with banning abortion effectively across the entire country. And they are back fully on that. So we knew that these attacks at the state level were going to continue, that the bans were going to continue to be put forward. They're going to be getting judges who will destroy you and strip your rights away. But now at least Ronna McDaniel and the RNC, Elise, are admitting it. That is their strategy going into the 2024 election.
I mean, at least they're saying it And the thing is, like, mask off Republicans are almost more preferable to me than, moseying around this narrative that they care about women. And what I hope and I fear is not going to happen is just, I don't want further polarization. I would hope that independents and Republicans understand, especially Republican women, that this doesn't benefit them. But the thing is just wealthy white women will still be able to get an abortion when they want to, and that's the reality of the thing. And but the vast majority of working class people are not going to be able to have access to this. And so I just hope that this is a turning of the tide, and the midterms was the first step, because we did see that this is not successful for Republicans. We'll vote blue, but more than vote blue, we're going to vote to safeguard abortion and block this permanently. I fear that that's going to take a lot longer than we think, but and so it's scary, and I really worry for a lot of people in the South and Midwest.
Yeah, I'm super worried about it too. I mean, look, I know some people respond to it sort of like zoomed out, pragmatic. This is bad politically for the Republicans. It does seem to have hurt their efforts in the midterms, so this will probably hurt them going forward. So maybe that's the thing that stops President DeSantis, and I understand that, trying to get some sort of like silver lining out of it. But these sorts of bans have been passed in multiple states. Tens of millions of people don't have the rights that they had their entire life as of the last year, and so there might be some silver linings. But as they continue this, they will do terrible things. And sure, if they try to pass it federally, it'll get blocked in the Senate, and Joe Biden would never allow it and all that. But remember, they're talking about this for 2024 when they could very well take the Senate back. It's going to be a bad cycle for the Democrats, and Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump could be president again. So at that point, is a 6-week national ban impossible? No, the Supreme Court would definitely allow it. So anyway, just something to bear in mind as we go forward. And the fact that, as we've said, their stance on this super unpopular is irrelevant to them. If we can jump to our last graphic 5, 85% of American voters think abortion should be legal in some or all circumstances. And the some circumstances they mean is not 6 weeks. So they are wildly out of the mainstream. The percentage that think it should be illegal in all circumstances has been dropping at a very fast rate, even since the death of Roe v. Wade. But that is not going to stop them. This isn't about popularity amongst like the broader public. This is about both for the elected officials and the pundits. It's proving their purity. It's about winning Republican primaries, differentiating themselves from other more establishment Republicans, and that leads to a lot of insanity. Okay, with that said, I'm gonna read 1 or 2 more comments. So we're gonna jump into one more ridiculous story. First of all, Brandy Lou 2 over on Twitch gifted 5 subs. Thank you so much for that. Very nice of you, much appreciated. Ruggedly Handsome subscribed at tier 1. Thank you for becoming a subscriber. Let's see, hold on. Sonic Screwdragon says, my dad is a MAGA diehard. I have to mute his 5 Facebook accounts. Why does he have 5 Facebook accounts? That is too many for anyone. Anyway, with that said, Irish Bi Dragon gifted a sub on Twitch. Thank you. Emo Dragon Katie gifted a sub. Thank you to everyone who's helping to make our community so welcoming by doing that. And thank you, Sedona Susan, for sticking with us for 29 months on Twitch. Very nice of you. Okay, with that said, let's jump into our final story. Is the sky falling? We're gonna find out together.
On Saturday, an enormous commercial egg farm in central Connecticut burned to the ground for no obvious reason. Huge fire. At least 20 fire departments responded, fought the blaze for over 8 hours. More than 100,000 chickens died. Now that's a sad story, but what's interesting is that most media companies did not consider it a story at all. Weird, considering egg prices have become an actual problem for most Americans. Egg prices are up more than 100% in many places. And yet at that exact moment, when eggs are a concern, 100,000 chickens die in a freak fire, and the New York Times, which is right next door in a neighboring state, does not even cover the fire? What is that? Don't worry. Things like this have nothing to do with egg prices, say the media. It's just avian flu.
Okay, so that might look like Tucker Carlson. It might have the same blank slack face as Tucker Carlson, but that is Alex Jones wearing the skin of Tucker Carlson. No, but really, it is ridiculous that Tucker's able to do that without at least paying royalties to Alex Jones. I mean, there was a fire at food processing plant. It happens. And it was intentional, according to him. No, seriously, it is a plot. Dark Brandon is going around the country killing all of the chickens to drive up the cost of eggs. The heavy cost of eggs that the Republicans are hammering him with. No, but seriously, think about the logic of that. The fact that eggs are expensive is bad for Biden and the Democrats. The Republicans are constantly attacking them for that. It's hurting Joe Biden. And Tucker Carlson's conspiracy theory is Biden's intentionally driving the price up. For what? Who the cluck knows? Certainly not Tucker Carlson. He's not making an actual case there. He just saw a thing happen and he's like, how dumb of a conspiracy theory can I get people to believe? And think about the way that he was spreading it too. He said prices went up, and at that exact moment, the thing burned. What exact moment? Prices have been going up for literally months. Which moment are you talking about? He wants you to believe that it's super suspect and coincidental. It's a massive span of time. There are hundreds of facilities like that. Yes, there are tragedies that happen sometimes. The fact that they happened at kind of the same time does not prove causality, but he clearly knows that. He's just hoping that his fans don't. What do you think?
My eggs have been $8 for months. I don't think a fire has to do with that.
At that exact moment, Elise?
Yeah. Don't you know? I mean, it's a cover up. There's been fires across the board, John, and this is just the first that we're uncovering because Biden has been trying to suppress it. But no, I'm kidding. But I really don't understand. It's kind of hilarious. He's getting more creative. But anything to just point the direction away from big ag, from price gouging corporations. Tucker Carlson is smarter than that.
Yeah, at least theoretically. He definitely doesn't think his fans are. So for context, 100,000 chickens dying is terrible. I don't want that to happen. I don't want any of the chickens to die. Do you know in the last year how many birds have died from the avian influenza? 57.8 million.
Whoa.
But it's probably not that though. Probably with the fire that happened 4 months into the rise in prices. That's probably what it is. No, but like people believe this. The idea that this is some intentional, why would destroying the food be a good thing? It is the most basic thing in the world that when things are going well in the country that benefits the people in charge. Why would he be driving up the prices of things? So simultaneously, by the way, and I understand we're going over, Biden is so diabolical that he's killing all the chickens to raise the price of eggs because that helps him. Also, he's illegally and unethically taking gasoline out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to drive down the cost of gasoline. At the same time, both of those benefit him for some reason I will never understand because I'm not out of my mind with brain worms. Anyway, that is all the time that we have. Elise, I want to thank you for joining me. Much of that show was pretty normal. It got a little bit weird at the end, but thank you for putting up with us.
Thank you. I have so much fun every time I come on.
Thank you. We love having you on. Hopefully we can do that again very soon. Between now and then though, where can people follow more of your work?
Gen Z for Change on all social media platforms. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, follow us and we'll have some pretty cool actions for you to get involved with our work.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Have a good one. And all of you at home, Indisputable is gonna be up next. You stay tuned for the Young Turks and Unbossed later on. For now though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there. See you soon.